Hey, what's going on? YST here, and welcome back to another Raid Shadow Legends video. And joined by me today is the man, the myth, the Jedi, DeadwoodJedi. How's it going, bro?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, man. It's always it's a pleasure to talk to you. I see you on stream all the time, and I freaking love it. And I don't know, I feel pretty honored to be here, honestly. So this is
I'm
great.
the one who feels honored. Guys, if you don't know who DeadwoodJedi is, you're probably living under a rock like Patrick in SpongeBob SquarePants. But he is the clan boss extraordinaire, the man behind the calculator. And today, what we're going to be doing is breaking down the basics of the clan boss, because I've done a lot of Ultra Nightmare teams and I've not really focused on the mid game to early game, and I thought let's get Deadwood on, explain like how affinities work, how to prevent them, the basic buffs and debuffs that you're looking for, and just what to focus on in the game to progress you to the later stages. But before we get into the video, Deadwood, do you just want to kind of talk about yourself, what you do in your scene, and what your YouTube channel is based on for people that don't know?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I've been doing Raid Shadow Legends content for almost 2 years now, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I guess about a year and a half, really. But I started basically the summer right after the pandemic began, and I built a calculator for clan boss, so you can put in the speeds, the sets, the champions that you're using, and be able to come up with exactly how that's going to work in the calculator now, or in the actual run in the game. Now, obviously, there's some caveats. There's certain masteries you can't use. There's certain champions you got to be careful with. RNG can't be factored into a calculator. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. But in general, it's been really good because we've been able to come up with a lot of different crazy speed tunes, and really, I think we've been able to kind of revamp how clan boss works for most of the player base here, which has been great. And so yeah, that's big thing. I stream a couple days every week on Twitch, and I try to put out YouTube videos mostly talking about clan boss, but I also talk about other things like arena and just champions you want to level up sort of things. I don't know, I do the same YouTube gambit that everybody else out here does, try to provide helpful information to everybody out there. And that's really my big thing, is just try to provide useful information for you guys and do it in a fun and enjoyable manner, and try to have a good time, and hang out with cool people, meet cool people like you.
So appreciate it, man.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, guys, I'm going to leave all of his stuff in the description below, like his YouTube channel and his Twitch channel. So if for some reason you're not subscribed, make sure you head over there and show Deadwood some love. So let's just get right into it. So the first topic I really want to speak about is going to be affinities, right? And there is 4 of them. So do you just want to talk about void and force, and then I'll break the other 2 down and kind of what they
absolutely do? Sure. There's, as you said, there's 4 affinities in this game. The one that we're all familiar with a lot of this stuff is void affinity, and it's, especially when you're very first starting, I didn't really understand how affinities really mattered at all. But the further you get into this game, the more and more important it becomes, because the great thing about void, I guess we can start there. The great thing about void affinity is that everybody is going to have a normal hit on it. Nobody can weak hit against void, and if you have a void champion, they'll never weak hit against somebody else. And you go, what does that really matter? It really matters because when you weak hit, not only are you doing considerably less damage, you can't crit on the hit, and that can make a big difference, but also any debuffs that require landing the attack won't land on weak hits. And so that can be a really big problem when you're trying to go against clan boss, or any other stage of the game. If you're trying to land that decreased defense, decreased attack, things that you need to do more damage or to stay alive, well, when you weak hit, that's not going to happen. So that can be a real big problem when you're facing affinity. On top of that, and so that's why void's so great, both as when you're attacking the clan boss, because you never have to worry about it then, but also when you're bringing champions in against the clan boss, because you don't ever have to worry about weak hits. And so that's always good. Now, when you're talking about something like force affinity, I would say generally the champions are more damage dealing types, but they have kind of a wide range, like all the affinities do, of the types of champions that bring in. But against clan boss, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I am, YST, but what happens is when the clan boss is force affinity, that means that any champions that you have that are magic affinity, blue affinity, they are going to have a chance to weak hit against that clan boss. And so they're going to do considerably less damage. They're not going to land their debuffs. And that's a major problem, because the magic affinity champions we have in this game are really good. Like most of the champions are magic affinity, and so when you're trying to land that decrease attack, that decrease defense, you're talking about champions like Draco, champions like Tyrell, you know, really strong champions. They're not going to be as effective against force, and that can be a major issue. Now, when you're talking about spirit affinity, the green affinity, they actually have strong hits against force, right? So that's going to be the affinity that they want to hit. So your Valkyrie is going to be even better than normal. Your Tomb Lord is going to be even better than normal, because they're going to always have a strong hit. They're either going to have a normal hit, or they're going to have a strong hit against that clan boss, which is great. The bigger issue becomes when the clan boss turns affinity. And any affinity the clan boss turn to means that they are going to be putting debuffs on your champions outside of just that little poison and that stun that they do. So the big issue is when you're facing force affinity, the clan boss, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they place a decrease attack debuff on all of your champions. And that's probably the most manageable of all of them, right?
Yeah,
the
sure.
Decrease attack debuff, I can handle that. I usually bring defensive champions or HP champions in anyway, so it's not usually a big issue. And then the other thing that we have to consider is the stun targeting. The clan boss will always prefer to hit a champion that is of weak affinity. So when you're facing the force clan boss, they're going to want to stun your champions that are magic affinity, your champions that are blue affinity. That's going to be their preference. Now, there's many things that go into who the clan boss stuns. It's not just that, but that is the overwhelming factor in things. So typically when I'm going against clan boss and I'm facing force affinity, I know and I will count on my blue affinity champions. Those are the ones that are going to get stunned. And I think that covers force and void for you.
Yeah, for sure. And so kind of how the clan boss works, guys, is it opens up with like a kind of, it's actually a 4-hitter. A lot of people don't know about this on Affinity, but when he's doing that crazy slam, it looks like a double hit from like when you're seeing the visuals, but it's actually a 4-time hitter. So there is a lot of champions which can benefit from this, but we'll talk about that later on. But it opens up with like a 4-time hitter, then he leads into that ability where he's actually placing these debuffs. And Deadwood just talked about the force with the decreased attack, and the most worst one in the game, in my opinion, is the spirit affinity. And he does that decreased speed, which can completely throw your team off tune. Ways to counter this, we're going to talk about that straight after. But also on the magic affinity, there's a decreased accuracy. It's just all those kinds of things you need to take into account. Understanding that the stun turn also comes after that on the third ability. So when you talk about a 1-to-1 ratio team, this is where you want to have your champions going at least 1 turn for every 1 turn of the clan boss, which we'll also speak about. The clan boss also has like a damage increase. So on his 10th turn, he's going to increase damage. On his 20th turn, he's increasing damage. And then 50th turn, he's going to start ignoring unkillable. So if you're running unkillable teams, this is where it's going to be a pain, but there is teams that can surpass that as well. Anything else here you want to touch on with affinities?
You know, I think you mentioned, I think one thing that's really important that you kind of touched on there is the fact that there's a difference when you're facing the Void clan boss versus the Affinity clan boss.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we refer to Affinity clan boss as being red, blue, or green. It doesn't matter because the mechanics stay the same generally. With the debuffs is basically the only thing that changes. But when you're going against Void, the attacks are different. When you're going against Affinity, you get more multiple attacks. And that is something to keep in mind, because that's something very different from how it would be normally, right? So you're getting multiple hits on your champions when you're facing Affinity as opposed to when you're facing Void. And for a variety of champions, like you mentioned, that can have a major impact on the damage you're actually dealing. So I think that's really the only big thing I just wanted to reiterate there.
Okay, so let's go into how to prevent them. So guys, if you do want to check out this tab that was on screen, it's actually a kind of quality of life thing they did in recent times, and you can kind of look through, see what the clan boss does, what abilities he's going to be doing. It doesn't show the affinities here, which is a bit weird, but it does show you the skills. So definitely a great kind of tool to check in the game. Let's go into a few champions that's kind of honorable mentions for early game. And one way to kind of prevent these debuffs is a block debuffs champion, and one that always comes to mind for me is Sepulchre Sentinel. Let's just bring her up here with a naked gear. So a champion like this, so she has a block debuffs, and what that kind of does is blocks the debuffs, exactly what it says. So if you want to kind of stop that decreased speed, stop that whatever the clan boss is throwing at you, this is how to counter that. And then there's a second way we can also cleanse. So champions like, one off the top of my head would be Doompriest, which we are going to be using in today's video. Where is she? Force Affinity, Doompriest, there she is.
There she is.
So she's got a passive that removes one random debuff from the start of this champion's turn. So if she's like the fastest in your team, or depending how you tune it, she's able to strip the debuff off that the clan boss puts on your champions at the start of each turn, right? So she's cleansing that stun, she's cleansing that decreased speed, that decreased accuracy, keeps your affinity friendly, and it's really amazing. Do you just want to talk about extensions as well? I think that's a pretty cool topic of block debuffs.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's funny that you mentioned this. I actually have a video coming out, I think in a day or two. We're going to cover all the different champions that can block debuffs for clan boss and are usable there.
Yeah.
So like if this is something where you're struggling with affinity, this is definitely kind of thing that you want to know, like who should I bring in and how do I use them? But yeah, you know, when you have a lot of champions that can place a 2-turn block debuffs, but there's even more champions that can only do it for 1 turn. Yeah. And so when you can bring in a champion like a Sandlash Survivor or like a Godseeker and Neri that can extend the duration of the buffs on your allies, you can turn those 1-turn block debuffs into 2-turn block debuffs.
Yeah.
And the great thing about having a 2-turn block debuff is for most of the basic tunes that we have out here, it allows you not only to block the affinity debuffs, right? That decreased speed from spirit, the decreased accuracy from magic, decreased attack from force, but it also allows you to block the stun as well. And so you're bringing one champion in that can cover all the debuffs. And I think that's just, you know, a really, really nice ability to be able to do. Obviously, there's champions out there that can cleanse. And cleansing debuffs is a great way to deal with it as well, but it's trickier against spirit because you're still getting a little bit of speed decrease, and so that can kind of throw off some of your tunes and stuff. I do, you know, I have some changes coming to the calculator that might be able to help some people out with that pretty shortly. But you know, there are that's a trickier thing to deal with. And yeah, Battle Khazar is a prime example of one of the best cleansers in this game, an absolute game changer, shall we say, for people there. But yeah, Doompriest is another great example of that type of champion. It's actually one of the ways that we're able to get teams like the Myth Air comp working, because we have a champion that can actually cleanse the stun built into that. Which if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of take into the next to another point here is like, when you're bringing champions in, you want champions that can do as much as possible for your team. You only have 5 champions. And I know we're going to be talking a little bit about like the things that you want to bring in your clan boss team. So when those 5 champions, the more stuff that you can pile into them, the better. That's why Sepulchre Sentinel is such an amazing champion, because not only does she bring that block debuff, not only does she also brings an increased defense buff, which is vital. She also brings a decreased attack debuff, which is vital. And so when you're bringing in multiple things, all of a sudden she's not just bringing in one thing. She's bringing in 3 important buffs and debuffs for your team. It becomes that much easier to keep everybody alive, and that much easier to bring in champions that are pure damage champions, like a ninja, for example. Someone that's like, hey, my job is to hit hard. And so, you know, bringing in someone like Sepulchre Sentinel that can make sure the team stays alive is really, really valuable. So yeah, I think that covers that.
All right, so next up here we're going to talk about basic buffs and debuffs to keep an eye out when you're first building your clan boss team, or if you're just trying to progress to Nightmare, because I did do a recent poll, Deadwood, and I put how can I
saw that
it?
poll.
Yeah, so basically I put, what difficulty are you hitting? Because I was intrigued to see what the viewers thought, and I believe it was 60% was doing Ultra Nightmare and 40% was doing Nightmare or below. And that kind of like, that's a big proportionate when you talk about 2,500 people. So I kind of think this is a really important topic.
Absolutely.
So basic buffs and debuffs. So do you want to kick us off with some top buffs that you would kind of recommend players to look out for?
100%, especially when you're talking about Nightmare and below on difficulty. I think there's a lot of different buffs and debuffs you can bring to the game. I think the one that is going to make the biggest impact on your clan boss teams at that level is going to be ally protection. I don't think there's anything more important, or not more important, but there's nothing that's going to be more impactful for you. Now you're showing a great champion that does Skullcrusher, who also brings in another buff that might that I in all honesty might be more important. It's just there's very few champions that have that. It's counterattack. If you have AoE counterattack, we're talking about Skullcrusher, Martyr, and Valkyrie. Literally the only 3 champions that have that in this game. That is going to be the most valuable thing you can bring in, simply because you're going to double your damage essentially with that, right? But outside of that, I would say ally protection is the most important buff to bring. Rearguard Sergeant is an excellent example of a champion that can do that. And basically what it does is it reduces the damage all your allies take. And because of the Gathering Fury passive ability that the clan boss has, the amount of damage that the ally protector is taking is really, really low in comparison to how much it's reducing for the rest of your team. And so that is absolutely one of the most important buffs that you can bring into your team. Not every team has to have it, right? It's not essential to your team, but it makes everything else so much easier, especially at the early levels. Even if you have a champion like a Miscreated Monster can be great. Really, anybody that does an ally protection ability on the full team. Someone like Rearguard Sergeant is more ideal. It's on a 3-turn cooldown. She brings other things to the table. But, if that's not somebody that you're able to bring in, pretty much anybody can do that job for you and do it really well, because it'll allow the rest of your team to stay alive longer, which means more time to put on poisons, more time to do raw damage, and just more damage overall in general. The only other buff that I really think is really vital is that increased defense.
Yeah.
When we were just talking about, affinity debuffs and blocking debuffs, and I think at the early stages it's not as important, right? You're just trying to stay alive as much as possible. But a champion like Jareg there brings literally the 2 most important buffs you can have: ally protection and increased defense. And if you think about it, if you have, I think it's 3,000 defense, you're mitigating like 60-70% of the damage that comes. If you can bump that up to like 4,800, now it's all of a sudden 85% that you're mitigating. With that increased defense buff, you turn that 3,000 defense into 4,800 defense, and it can really help your whole team stay alive a lot longer. I really try to keep increased defense up for the entire fight with my teams, and I try to keep ally protection on as much as I can as well, because that will 100% keep your team alive for a very, very long time. So you don't have to even really build crit rate, you don't have to build a lot of damage. As long as you have somebody putting up poisons and you can survive a very long time, you'll do good damage on these difficulties. And bringing ally protection, bringing increased defense is a wonderful way to make that happen for you.
100%. One honorable mention in there for buffs as well as like a basic thing would be someone like a Whirling Frost King. Where are you? Where champions like this have a strengthened ability, right, with an increased defense. So if by some chance you've been around the game for a long time or just revisiting, a champion like Whirling is really useful because he has 2 really crucial buffs on a 3-turn cooldown. But the strengthen is really underrated in my opinion. A lot of people kind of forget that strengthen even exists from like an average player standpoint. Like, they remember increased defense and stuff, but strengthen has a lot of value, guys. So if you've got a champion like this that's useful, definitely maybe think about putting it in your team.
Strengthen is absolutely great. Absolutely, it's a great buff to bring in. It's less common, and I think that's one of the reasons why I leave it off my list of things to bring in. And also, once you already have increased defense and ally protection, it's almost superfluous, right? Like, the more buffs you can bring in, the better. But I would say, though, if you can't find ally protection for your team, Strengthen's a great substitute, right? If you can't find increased defense for your team, definitely try to get some Strengthen in there. It is really, really strong and really valuable for sure. I do think it is something that, if you can find it on champions to bring in, it's definitely going to be worth your time. It does a lot of damage mitigation. It's very nice.
Okay, so I think we should just kick off with some debuffs now. So I'll kick it up with like the first ones. So this is the first thing. When you're thinking about a clan boss team, this is what you want. Decrease attack on the clan boss on a consistent basis. Deadwood, I don't think, you may have seen this. Obviously, you probably have on stream. People say, oh, can you show me how to make my clan boss team better? They are running a no decrease attack and it's just criminal. I don't know. I don't know what's good. Like, guys, decrease attack is so vital to survive, even past like stage 20 on the clan boss. If you want to start seeing like 1 keys or 2 keys, you're not doing it without that debuff. Very crucial. A great example would be a Tyrell. Where are you, Mr. Tyrell? There you are. So people like this, so they got like there's a big version of decreased attack, and then there's a small version, and it kind of goes for many of the buffs or debuffs in the game. So decreased attack is amazing, leading into decreased defense. Really crucial when paired with something like a weaken, where someone like a Raz and Scarhide, who is a free fusion for most players, well every player, but pretty hard to get. Really crucial debuffs, yeah. So
Yeah.
those are just the three that I wanted to mention. Do you want to lead into a couple more?
Yeah, I mean, first, I just want to say you're 100% correct, right? Like, those are absolutely the things you need. Decreased attack is by far the most important debuff you can bring. Decreased defense is right behind it. Weaken is right behind that. Interesting little fact, actually, because of the different levels of defense that the clan boss has, at Nightmare, having weaken or having decreased defense, they're pretty much equal. When you're facing Ultra Nightmare, decreased defense is more valuable. And when you're actually going on Brutal or lower, Weaken is going to be a more valuable debuff than decreased defense for you. It's going to help you do more damage. But both are great, and I do encourage you to bring them both in whenever possible. Outside of those 3 debuffs, though, the only two that are actually left that you need to bring in is going to be poisons and HP burn. And these are not, how do I put this? These aren't essential to doing damage. Like, if you look at the top damage teams, you look at end game builds, these are kind of secondary things, right? You have a champion that brings in poisons, great, but even if you don't, it's not going to really have a major impact. And the reason why is the raw damage that we're doing is more than enough for what we're facing. But if you don't have raw damage dealers, if you can't build crit rate on your champions, if you can't build crit damage on your champions, 100%, the most important thing you need to get in there is some poisons, because they do lots of damage every single turn. So yeah, starter champion like Kale, one of the reasons why he's considered the best starter champion isn't because his kit's all that much better than anybody else's, simply because of the fact he's the only one that brings poisons.
Yeah.
And that makes him extremely viable for clan boss. When I was moving from Nightmare to Ultra Nightmare, actually I think when I was moving from Brutal to Nightmare, I had Kale was my poisoner, and he was my poisoner at Nightmare for a very long time because he does a job. He brings you 4 of the big poisons. He brings you some of the little poisons. He's a very good champion for that. And we have so many more poisoners out there. Frozen Banshee, of course, is
amazing,
the most well known because she's a rare champion and does poisons about as well as anybody else out there. Cult Brawler is another wonderful option for poison champions. These are champions that don't do a lot else for you, but they become your damage dealers basically because they're putting poisons up every single turn on the clan boss, and that's where you're going to get most of your damage early on. This is why 100%. Things like ally protection are more valuable, because they let you last longer, which allows you to put more poisons and allows more turns for those to tick. So you can build your team completely on the side of, I just want to survive, I don't care about damage, and let your poisoners do all the damage for you. In just doing that, you can pretty easily 2-key Nightmare.
Yeah.
If you can survive long enough, it's not that difficult. I mean, that philosophy can actually carry you to 3-keying Ultra Nightmare pretty easily as well. So yeah, if you don't have a poisoner on your team, and I didn't for a long time, actually. For a long time, my only poisoners were like Kale and Steel Skull.
Yeah, well,
but
Steel Skull's
I was
amazing.
able to, and they're great champions, right? But like, all they do is they barely put up any poisons, not like the kind of level that I would want, like an occult brawler who I was desperate for a long time. But the reason why I was able to have success with that, and I was able to get to 3-key Ultra Nightmare with those teams, was because I built the rest of my team tanky enough to survive and allow the poisoners to do their job over time. And I think if you can do that, you're in great shape.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning as well, the clan boss only has 10 debuff slots, and a common mistake that I always see is people are bringing in multiple poison champions, and they're forgetting to the crucial things like decreased attack, decreased defense, etc. So if you do have a poisoner, maybe stick to 1, or maybe at the very top 2. I wouldn't go any further than that.
Yeah. It also depends a lot on what kind of poisoners you're bringing in. Someone like a Cult Brawler, who we mentioned earlier, puts up poisons as a passive and as a skill. So a Cult Brawler can almost fill up a debuff bar by himself. You don't want to put anybody else with him, because then you run out of slots for things like decreased attack or decreased defense. And you're right, there's only 10 debuff slots on the clan boss. You can't have more than that. You know, interesting, you can't have more than 10 buffs or debuffs on any champion, period. So, you know, if you're trying to build that and you're going, okay, I'm going to bring in Kale, I'm going to bring in Frozen Banshee, I'm going to bring in a Cult Brawler. Well, all of a sudden you got 10 debuffs on, but you're only lasting 15 turns because you don't have room to have decreased attack out there. And that can be a major issue for you. So you definitely want to balance your team, right? It's not, oh, if I put more of these guys in, it'll just be better. That doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So you need, like, you know, pick your one, pick your two. And then also it's always important to watch the run, especially early on, until you get something consistent. So you can see, hey, you know what? We didn't land decreased attack there because we had too many poisons up, or that debuff bar is, you know, it's only ever got like 5 debuffs on it. I now have room for another poisoner or some debuffer, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you know, paying attention to that stuff is really important too, I think.
Okay, so guys, I'm just going to talk briefly about a clan boss team that I'm going to be showing today. It's not a pure guide, but I want to show how synergy can really help your team when it's paired correctly. So we're going to be surpassing a 1 key on the nightmare difficulty using epics only. And just touching up on that poison thing we mentioned earlier, burns you can only place 1 at any given time, so it can't stack like a poison debuff, which kind of makes poison better. But when you have champions like Geomancer, which we are going to be showcasing today, they have like passives where they can reflect, and that's kind of where the value comes from. But if you've got normal burn champions, it's not as great as the poison debuff. But what I'm going to do is quickly go over these champions here and their speeds. So we got Geomancer at a 174 speed, and he's mainly for the burns, keeping us affinity friendly to remove the increased attack from the clan boss, and he just deals some great damage. Masteries, we've gone the offensive tree and the support tree, trying to extend. And that's kind of it for Geomancer. And heading into the next champion, it's going to be a champion that I've been excited to use. Have you used Hotatsu recently, Deadwood?
Say that again?
Have you used Hotatsu?
I have used Hotatsu, yes, a little bit here and there. He has a kit that I think should be great, but it's a little bit inconsistent with that decreased attack, and that makes him a little bit difficult to use. For some of the stuff where I like to have stuff, you know, 100% all the time. But I mean, I think he looks great. I think he could be really, really good for people.
Well, we are going to be using him today, guys, so hopefully we can put a smile on Deadwood's face. So this is kind of a way that you can implement poisons into your composition if you do not have poison champions, and that is a toxic set. So that's what I've got my Hotatsu in today. If you do want to see anything else, guys, you can head into the Discord link below, and you can kind of ask about the full kind of champion kits. But it'll all be in the description of this video, so be sure to check that out if you want to replicate this clan boss team. So on his kit, he's got a leech, which allows you to kind of move away from lifesteal gear on all of your champions, especially if you've got decreased defense and weaken on the clan boss. You're going to be healing your champions all the way up to full without that kit, so this is a really strong debuff. We've got decreased attack on the A2, increased defense and continuous heals, and the masteries. We've got an offensive and the support tree once again. And then the overall stats is a 172 speed, 59,000 HP, 3.3k defense. Heading into the next champion quickly is going to be Rearguard Sergeant, which is a really great pair when you talk about Hotatsu, because she places decreased attack, he also places decreased attack, so it keeps it up consistent. And what I like to do is have a double ally protection. I'll lead into that champion next, and her abilities is decreased defense, covering one of those bases to pair with your Geomancer, who applies the weaken, decreased attack on AoE 1, which is where I'm personally going to be using it, and an ally protection to protect my stun target. So we're going to be using counterattack today also, and he's going to be protecting the AoEs, which is like the double slams on the first hit and the second hit. And this is going to protect my stun target of Hotatsu to make sure I can surpass 50 turns in the clan boss. Masteries, we've got an offensive tree down to Warmaster, and the defensive tree trying to get those counterattacks. Next, we might as well head into Skullcrusher, the only epic counterattack champion in the game. Where are you? Force Affinity, there you are. handsome fella. So we've gone Lifesteal again on this champion, mainly because this is attainable for most of you players out there, because you kind of get it at the start of the game. You're always farming the Dragon's Lair, and this is kind of the gear set that you're looking for as a starter champion or starter kit. A1, we don't really care about that, but at counterattack and ally protection, as we spoke about earlier, it's really strong against the clan boss. Allows you to get two hits out for every one hit you would in a normal composition. And ally protection, making our sustainability really insane. Also this as well, but we don't have to worry about that in this run today. Masteries, offensive and defense tree, you kind of get the theme by now. Overall stats, we've got 64,000 HP. You don't have to have it this high, guys. This was just gear that I had on my account to spare. 4.2k defense and a 171 speed, and you don't have to worry about accuracy on this dude. Okay, and the next champion is going to be Doompriest, and this is mainly for the cleanse. So in this team today, I kind of focus on leech, decrease attack, decrease defense, weaken, ally protection, cleansing our stun targets, keeping us affinity friendly, and to remove any damage or debuffs from AoE 2. I kind of tried to incorporate every single thing that is like a basic debuffs and buffs into this clan boss build. So what she does is, on her passive, removes one random debuff at the start of this champion's turn. Masteries, offensive and defensive, just like the other champions. And I didn't even use a banner, I just tried to get the speed here. This kind of shows the value of her kit. She's going at the fastest at 178. So we're going at a 1-to-1 ratio today, and that is the team. So let's go into the run. And then whilst the run is on, we're going to be discussing DeadwoodJedi's calculator while that's going on. Actually, do you know what? Before we go into this run, let's throw that up. Okay guys, so this is DeadwoodJedi's calculator, and you just want to give a very brief overview of what this is and what kind of stuff it has to provide for the community, because it is amazing.
Absolutely. So, I mean, obviously you're on the website itself. So
yeah,
on the website, I actually, deadwoodjedi.com.
If you didn't know.
On the website itself, we have a list of all the speed tunes. So all the speed tunes that we've accumulated and discovered and people from the community have put together, we have a list of them, so you can actually search and find them, and you have a nice template for your team. There's probably a tune out there that works for the champions you have currently, not just the champions but also the gear, which is important. So being able to go there, and I try to explain some of the stuff with it on that page as well. But yeah, here, this is the calculator itself. And it can look a little bit intimidating. You're like, there's a lot of colors, there's a lot of names, a lot of crazy stuff going on. I did make a tutorial video, so there is a help section on the website. There's a help button up there that'll take you to that. It really does. I spent a lot of time going in pretty in depth on how this works and how to use it. But yeah, you'll see it there. But on here, basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to find a team that works regularly. You'll notice, like, if you look at the colors there, they kind of all come at the same time, right? They're in the same order over and over again. Each color relates to one of the champions over there on the far left of the screen, and basically you put in the champion, you put in, you find the champion, they're all listed in there, you put in the base speeds, the basic speeds that's listed on the thing, you put in their speed sets and stuff, because the speed that you are seeing in the game isn't actually the true speed that these champions are running at. So that is because there's like multipliers and percentages of things from speed sets, perception sets, lore of steel mastery. You have to input all that stuff, and then we find out the true speed, and that true speed can impact how a run goes. So knowing that can really affect where things are. Making sure you have them in the right turn order can affect how things are. That's how ties are split. So but basically what you can do is you can see how your team's going to look. So looking at this calculator, because I know YC already put everything in because he's good like that. We know that we're going to have Skullcrusher going last every turn. And we can even input the delays, like how many turns we want to wait before we use a certain skill. So like we know Skullcrusher's A2 is on a 3-turn cooldown. But because, I think we're going fast enough to go first. And so because of that, we know we can use that right away. In most of these skills we can use right off the jump there. We don't have to wait about it. But someone like Rearguard Sergeant, where we want the ally protection to help us for the stun itself, I can input a 2-turn delay there so that you can see that A3 skill is actually happening before the stun, and so all the allies will have ally protection for the stun. And so you can really manipulate the calculator of your team so you can see exactly what you're getting into before you get into it. And it's a really good way to speed tune your team so that you're gonna maximize the buffs and debuffs that your team is able to bring. So basically making sure your champions are doing everything they can to give you a good run in clan boss. That's kind of the idea behind speed tuning anyway, right? It's like, well, I've got Skullcrusher, I want him to keep unkillable up, or I want him to keep counterattack up for everybody for both AoE so we can get the most benefits out of that. If I put everybody at willy-nilly speeds, that's not going to be the case. So by speed tuning, we're able to maximize the skills and the abilities he brings, just like having Doompriest go first every turn. We're maximizing the ability of Doompriest to be able to cleanse, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's
really cool for sure.
Great way to improve the damage of your teams.
Yeah, props to you. Like, guys, even if you look at the visual kind of things, so you can see where the buffs are staying up on champions. When it's grayed out, it means it's dropped off on a champion. And you can kind of play around with the speeds on the left-hand side. I hope I'm not too much in the way. So changing, like, Doompriest to, like, less speed, you can see that it's affecting the turn order on the right-hand side. So if you want to make your own compositions, you can. But if you head back into his website, he has got loads of community and self-made compositions that you can just click through yourself. So if we click on like here, we've got videos, we've got links. You can even view the composition live on screen, take the speeds and all of that good stuff. You can check for like ultra nightmare difficulties, nightmare. Wherever you're focusing on, this is probably the best tool for clan boss, period. So that was just kind of a basic introduction to it. I hope you guys come and check it out. It will be in the description below. And yeah, thanks Deadwood for making this for the community, 100%.
Absolutely. I mean, to be fair, I made it for myself. It just happens to be something that the community is taking advantage of too.
There we go. Okay guys, so this is the team that we did just mention earlier. So we got Hotatsu in the lead with a defensive based aura. We got Geomancer. He's going to be the MVP of damage here with that reflection of HP burn. We got Skullcrusher, ally protection and counterattack. Rearguard Sergeant to protect our stun target and also to apply the decreased attack on AoE 1. Doompriest, the fastest in our team, making sure that we're affinity friendly, and let's go into the run. This is actually a really cool team, Deadwood. I was really excited to make this with Hotatsu for once. But yeah, guys.
I like it.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, actually, one of the things that, you know, I have my issue with Hotatsu is his decreased attack isn't regular enough for me. But the fact that you have Rearguard Sergeant in there who kind of has that same issue, they balance each other out in a way that I think could be really good and allows you to be more confident that you're going to be landing decreased attack when you need it consistently for your team. I think that's a really smart and really good way to approach this.
Yeah, so how you do want to set this up, guys, is very simple. There is a preset for it, which I'll leave in the description below, but I like to delay Rearguard's A3 ability because we want to protect our stun target, right? So you could just put anything here, Doompriest, doesn't really matter. And then you want to place the decreased attack here on AoE 1. And then you place the Geomancer with the burn and the weaken. And then you open up here with the increased defense on Hotatsu. Skullcrusher counterattack. So you're going to see here, if you're not familiar with Clan Boss, everyone's going to be taking an extra hit here. So let's just cycle through this here. And there's the drop defense, which is really great for Rearguard Sergeant. So here, she's going first, keeping us affinity friendly. And then here, you just want to delay once with Rearguard Sergeant. And then what do you do here, guys? Click auto and enjoy. So this team here today is going to hopefully surpass 50 turns with some good RNG. The best I've seen was maybe 65 to 70 turns. So it is a really strong team. And you surpass well past the 1 key. If you're thinking about an Ultra Nightmare team, this team could definitely get you a very simple free key. And I'm really confident in that. So if you do want to see a part 2, I'll do that in another video. But what we're going to do is let you guys enjoy the run. We'll come back to you towards the end. And yeah, guys, enjoy the damage. Let's go. And there we have it, guys. 52.86 million damage dealt. And you can see here that Geomancer is really insane with the damage output here with that reflection of HP burn. We had Skullcrusher protecting our champions. We had Rearguard protecting our stun target. Doompriest for the cleanse. And Hotatsu. That leech is really great against the clan boss, keeping you topped up to full. You can see there, he had no lifesteal on. He was in a toxic set. So if you do have a leech on the clan boss, you can kind of drop off the lifesteal, start replacing it with like Stalwat to reduce AoE damage. And it really does work out great. Deadwood, anything you want to see on this composition here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really well put together team. You know, the fact I was nervous about Hotatsu and the fact that that decreased attack isn't consistent, but bringing in Rearguard Sergeant is such a great balance to that, because between the two of them, you're going to have that up 100% of the time. You have every debuff that you could want. You got healing with the leech, not to mention the lifesteal gear on everybody. Yeah. And also one of the best things about this is that your team is going at like 171 to 178 speed, I think, right around that range.
Yep.
Those speeds will still work for Ultra Nightmare and keep you in tune. You will miss the first turn. The clan boss will go first, and so you'll have to delay some of the skills like the counter attack to happen at the timing you want. You'll probably have to, you know, delay skills until after that first stun. But, you know, to give up one attack and still have this be useful on Ultra Nightmare is pretty remarkable, and that allows you to really build a team for Nightmare. And as you're making that transition to Ultra Nightmare, you don't have to change your speeds. Maybe you start to see, okay, we're not surviving long enough. I need more defense. I need more HP. I can build more attack, whatever. But it works just as well in Ultra Nightmare. And we were talking, actually, I rarely build teams at, you know, over 190 speed. Yeah. I usually keep them in the 170s when I can, because I can stack more defense, stack more HP on them. And I don't mind missing one little turn in order to, you know, keep them alive for a couple extra cycles of attacks.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really, like, it's quite accessible really as well. Like, if you talk about just epic champions, this is some really great results. So if you're trying to like reach Ultra Nightmare for the first time, this is a way you could potentially free key, use the exact same speed tune, and then focus on your Nightmare one key as well. So really great team in my opinion. Many ways you could potentially make this better, as I said, with Stalwat and stuff. But overall, I hope this could help you guys out. So yeah guys, that is going to be all for the video. I hope you enjoyed the basic buffs and understanding the clan boss in 2022 with the main man DeadwoodJedi. Long overdue collaboration, but it was a pleasure. Any last words, Deadwood, before we sign off?
Long overdue indeed. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks a lot for having me on, man. We'll find some time to get you on my channel too, because this was definitely enjoyable. It's always nice to talk to people that know what they're talking about when it comes to clan boss. I always appreciate that. And so yeah, thanks for having me on. Hopefully you guys do better damage going forward. You better, after all of this time. But yeah, thanks guys. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, and head over to DeadwoodJedi's channel for some amazing clan boss builds. He's been doing it for like 2 years. He knows what he's doing, and he's got that amazing calculator all in the description below. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.